Halftime Howie here. Sometimes we do a little improvisation, and I have Rich Kaplan next to me. And Rich, can you imagine you're 7 years old, you're excited to go on a flight, and all of a sudden, as that plane is coming down, disaster strikes. Now, she is just a new member of Miss New York Senior America, but when she was a 7-year-old girl, and she still remembers it like it was yesterday, Maureen Griffin, tell us what happened to a major event early in your life.
It was a month before my 8th birthday. We were coming back from Puerto Rico. We were in St. Thomas, and we almost missed that little flight. So we actually almost missed this flight, and it was a brand new big 707. It's 1964, and I was all excited. It was like my second trip to the Caribbean when I was a kid, and it was a dark and stormy night, as they say, and they diverted us to Dulles Airport, and a lot of people got off, and my mother remembers seeing a lot of mechanics hovering around the landing gear, and we decided to stay on the flight and go home. And I was airsick the whole time because we were just hitting air pockets like crazy up and down. My stomach would be up there, my body would be down here. It was terrible. And I almost stayed in the bathroom for the landing. And my mom said, no, I think we better get to our seats and buckle up, which is what we did. And at that time, they didn't have all the rules and regulations that they have now. They didn't have the stewardesses going through the plane saying, buckle up, put your seats up. So a lot of people were just hanging out, and by that time they had been drinking and drinking and drinking because we were so many hours delayed. So when we finally landed, we were the only plane that came in that night. They had closed Kennedy Airport, and I remember when we hit the tarmac, the plane just started to shake. It started just to go like this, and even though it was only my third airplane trip, I knew that didn't feel right. And the thoughts going through my head were, are we gonna crash? And I said, no, that only happens in the movies. And the next thing I know, we belly flopped. The landing gear had collapsed. We belly flopped on the runway, and we slid into Jamaica Bay, or whatever that bay is right there by the Parkway. And the ceiling came down, the overhead started to come down. My dad was up a few rows. I saw him catch it with his hand, and it was like clockwork. It was my parents, like they had rehearsed this 100 times. Nobody said a word, nobody panicked. My mom undid my strap. By that time, my dad had come, reached for me, carried me over the debris on the floor, and I was out of the plane. And in the pouring rain and the mud, it was low tide, and the bank was up to here on me. It was way over my head because I was only 7 years old, and I'm trying to climb up in the mud, and I'm just getting muddier. And
the plane was cut in half.
The plane, I didn't know that till the next day, and I saw the pictures in the paper. The plane had cracked in half, 3 seats behind where I was sitting, and I had no idea. And we were fenced in, and they lost us on radar and didn't know we were on the ground. Somebody passing by saw us, and he threw a blanket over to us. And he went and he called the police and the fire department, who had to come with wire cutters to cut us out.
Amazing. Wow.
From a technical aspect, Richard, you did some research on that flight, and I know you were quite fascinated to interview Maureen. It's the first person you ever met that survived a plane crash. What do you remember in your research about that plane crash?
I remember back then, the FAA scrutinized the landing gear. They scrutinized the fact that the wheels collapsed so easily, which they shouldn't have, and the conditions that day for the landing. I mean, the weather was very, very, like she had pointed out, there was a lot of turbulence. And when you attempt a landing in turbulence, or you attempt a landing, like even this weather right now, it's raining outside.
And windy.
And windy. You attempt a landing, you have 3 variables that play part, Howie. You have the winds, which can, in many cases, cause an airplane when you're coming in. If you can focus on my hand for a second, I'm going to demonstrate what's called a crosswind landing. A crosswind landing is when the winds start to blow literally across, and it forces the aircraft to slide. And in this case, the plane is sliding to the right or to the left, not centered on the runway like it's supposed to, and usually most pilots will abort this landing. Some pilots, some pilots are gung-ho. They think, okay, I can handle this. This is no big deal. I can land this plane. I've landed 1,000 times. it's not true because crosswind landings are notorious. Now, I'm not saying that there were crosswind conditions that day. Unfortunately, I wasn't born until 1970, so I was an embryo. So back then, I don't know what the weather really was like that particular day, but I can guess, given what we have, the technical information, I can formulate a pretty good idea that there was severe turbulence, possible microburst activity, which is also known as wind shear. Wind shear are downward force winds that can blow an aircraft into the ground. It's also known as a microburst. That's what the FAA like to coin it, and that's how I coin it. Microbursts are not uncommon, especially around Jamaica Bay, because you have the wind off the ocean that generates. And when you have ocean effect winds or lake effect winds, as they call it, you have conditions that are ripe for microbursts. I believe that's what happened to your aircraft. I believe your plane hit a microburst. I believe the pilot did everything he could to commit to the landing, because once you commit to a landing, there's a certain point in aviation, when you do departures, you have what's called V1, which is committing to the takeoff. That you're absolutely 100% committed. You can't change your mind. V2 is when you rotate. That is when you pull the wheel off the ground and you are airborne. The same can be said with landings. When you're landing, you don't really have much time to abort a landing. Usually you'll abort a landing right before you hit the runway. So if the runway's here, Rocco, let's say this is Rockaway Turnpike and here's runway 22, we're coming in on 22. Right about here is where I'm going to abort the landing. I'm not going to wait till I hit the tarmac. I'm not going to wait. This pilot was too late in aborting. So he committed to the landing. Back then, very little was known about wind shear. Unfortunately, we didn't have the signs that we have now, where you have a radar that can literally penetrate a storm front and tell you exactly what's in that storm front. We don't have that technology back then. So we don't know what wind shear is. So the pilot's going on the assumption that it's just turbulence. I'm going to make the landing. Makes the landing. He does a hard landing, breaks the back of the aircraft, fractures this fuselage in half, which is why the plane broke in half, because he broke the back of the plane when he hit the main wheels on that. The 707 has what's called a double bogey landing gear. It's 2 wheels on each side. So when he hit really hard. Now I'm going to actually quote a film. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to quote the movie Airplane. If you remember the movie Airplane, where the plane came in and we saw the plane coming in, all of a sudden the landing gear snapped off, that's a similar concept. When you do a hard landing, you hit the ground so hard that you can literally snap the wheels right off the jet. It's very unusual to see this, but back then it wasn't uncommon. We saw this on several anomalies. The most recent one that I can recall of was a hard landing at Newark International with the FedEx MD-11, where he did a hard landing and he actually flipped the plane over. So, this is a jumbo jet, by the way. So, it's not uncommon, Howie, that we see this. So, what happened to you, I believe, was a microburst. And that particular day, God bless you that you're here to talk about it, because not many people would, in such intense detail. It's one of the things I admire about you, is that you have such incredible detail into it. That's how I can figure this whole thing out. From an investigatory standpoint, as an enthusiast, I love investigating plane crashes. It's my passion. And this particular one really fascinated me, because I'm sitting there wondering to myself, it's 1964, I'm a pilot, I don't have all the information, I don't have the computers, I don't have the joystick, I don't have next red radar or Doppler radar, so I don't know what's ahead of me. So I'm going on pure instinct. This pilot, I'm not saying he hot dogged it or anything, I'm just saying that he made a landing that any pilot today would not have attempted. I'm from a standpoint, I do flight simulators. In my flight simulator technology, I tried to recreate this flight. I will not attempt that landing. I will not attempt it for 2 reasons. One, because I know the microburst technology is telling me that it's going to smash my nose into the ground. And number two, I know that Jamaica Bay is notorious for wind conditions. So I'm not going to attempt it.
And Maureen, this kind of reminds me of the Titanic movie at the beginning, where the woman came forward, said that she was on that ship, and there was an expert that gave the expert analysis, and then she told what it was like actually being on that ship 80 years ago. So, Maureen, it was over 40 years ago, but I think you remembered in the past that a key component about saving your life and others was the mud.
The mud saved us. It was our belief that, I don't remember a very hard landing. It could have been. I don't remember that. I remember the shaking. Our feeling was that it cracked in half when it belly flopped. After it hit, when the landing gave way and it hit, that's our feeling. I didn't see it because it was right behind me. And then we slid into the bay. Now, we always said thank God for the mud, because we had just refueled in Dulles Airport. So we had a fuel tank, a full tank, and when we got there, and I was covered in mud. The mud had all the diesel fuel in it. And I just reeked of diesel fuel and mud for hours and hours until we eventually got home. And for many, many, many years, if I passed a bus or I passed an airport and I smelled diesel fuel, I would start to get nauseous just from that smell. It was our feeling that pilot saved our lives. It was our feeling that he did the best damn job he ever could have done. I don't remember his name. But the entire nose cone was ripped off. The plane was in half. It was low tide, so we got out in the mud. We were in first class, and the people in the back had to get out in rafts. But if it weren't for that mud, people kept saying, "We got to get away from the plane." They kept, running away from the plane when they got out, as they said it could explode. So we're grateful for the rain and the mud that night.
Well, that's another interesting fact.
What an interesting story. So
She brings up an interesting fact, the fact of the mud. And one of the things that I do when I'm in the cockpit, or virtual cockpit rather, if I know I'm not going to make the landing, I'm going to aim for the mud. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to aim for the mud. The reason why I'm going to aim for the mud is two reasons. One, mud acts as a retard to the jet fuel. Because the mud is moist, it's not going to create as much of a friction base for a fire as if I land on the tarmac and metal against metal against cement. You have the sparks and you're igniting your fuel tank. Number two is the fact that particular day it must have been raining, so my belief is definitely that this pilot knew enough to knew that if once the landing gear collapsed, he pretty much knew, okay, I'm along for the ride, I'm aiming for the mud. I believe he aimed for it.
We overshot the runway. What happened was, when we landed, we would have been okay if he could have stopped. But when we just slid off the end of the runway. So we almost ended up on the parkway. But so we slid into the bay. We were right at the bank. And you see the pictures, the bank is there, the fence is there, and the parkway's right there. Wow. That's how that guy happened to see us, because we were maybe 20 feet from the parkway.
That's a big airplane, too. Wow.
Yeah.
what a great, thank you for sharing, thank you for your expert analysis, and I'm sure your husband is grateful that you survived that plane crash, and all your friends, and all the great work you continue to do. So we thank Richard Kaplan and Maureen Griffin for sharing an amazing, amazing event, and thank God you survived.
Yes, and I thank Richard for telling me all of this stuff after the fact. And I think you told me the last time we talked about this that they redesigned the landing gear after that crash.
Yes, they have redesigned the landing gear. The landing gear now on aircraft pivot. On the 707, the landing gear usually was straight when it was down and in locked position. On the newer aircraft, the landing gears, if you notice, like on 747s, they go like this. This is to absorb the shock of the touch. The minute that wheel touches the ground, it is the equivalent of literally being slammed at like 1,000 miles an hour into a wall. It is really a hard impact. I don't know how else to explain it. But nowadays, the landing gear pivots. You have the 777's landing gear, which pivots. And in fact, it actually, when it's retracting, it has to pivot almost 35 degrees at an angle just to retract into the belly. So I very quickly want to thank somebody for helping me with this segment. I want to thank A.L. Kashani if he watches this. He's from New Jersey. He's an aviation enthusiast as well. He helped me research this. So, Eyal, I really thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for the research. I know I kept you up late last night. Thanks a lot for the help. I really appreciate it. Believe me, we all do.
Okay, so thanks to Richard Kaplan, Maureen Griffin on this amazing story that happily had a happy ending. Thank you. Okay, at this time, this is really cool. If someone told me 3 weeks ago that the Red Sox and Mets would have the 2 best records in baseball, I would have taken it. My beloved Red Sox are 13-2, but the Mets are 12-2. 32 years ago, they met in the World Series in 1986. But it is really cool for Met fans that they're 12-2 out of the gate, and Red Sox fans are pumped up. They're 13-2 while the Yankees are 7-7. So Liam, how happy are you as a Met fan?
Honestly, I'm very happy as a Met fan, but I am a lot more happy for my brother. He's a diehard Met fan. He's gotten me into the Mets. Him and I would go with our dad to Shea Stadium back in the day. He would toss peanut shells on me, but I was just watching the game. I was having a blast. So after having games where the Mets would do well, they drop the ball, or they just have a bad season altogether, when I first heard when at my old job, when they finally got to the World Series, I was ecstatic to hear it. Then now they're having a great season this time around, and I hope they make it to the World Series again.
All right, and the Red Sox fans are thrilled because they're 13-2. They're playing great. Everyone in the offseason predicted the Yankees would win the division this year. Hey, there's a long way to go. I'm not going to bury the Yankees yet, but 13-2 is a great start for the Red Sox, and Met fans are very excited. They're 12-2. They swept the Nationals. They're playing great. So who knows, folks? 32 years later, maybe we'll see a Met-Red Sox rematch 32 years later. That would be great. Mets-Red Sox in the World Series 1918. Let's make it happen! My Red Sox are the best team in baseball right now with a record of 13 wins and 2 losses. They're a winner. But right now, I'm going to pay tribute to the winner of the week. And the winner of the week is not an athlete. One thing we're extremely passionate on this show is preventing bullying. Well, there was a video this week that went viral from a girl in 4th grade in Pennsylvania who put out a video about being bullied. Well, a very famous actor contacted her and said he's going to support her every inch of the way. Hugh Jackman, who's a mega superstar, actor, singer, dancer, mega star. And I just think it's so great that Hugh Jackman would take time off from his very busy schedule to support this 4th grade girl who was bullied severely in Pennsylvania. It just shows you that some people have a good heart and are doing the right thing. So we salute Hugh Jackman for supporting this girl who was bullied. Hugh Jackman is our person of the week. All right, folks, I want to just say thank you to all our guests. Our singing guests today, singing gospel. Maureen Griffin was awesome. Our regulars, the Renaissance Band. Scott Barone with the photography and music was awesome. Rocco Pasafumi with his movie review was great. My man Liam McAdam with his video games is terrific. Mayor Minch with his Geno's report was great. And of course, aviation doing double duty today. Rich Kaplan was awesome. So great show. Make sure to check out our show on the Halftime Howie Show. And with that, we're out of time. We thank Ponchos. And let me wrap with this. My name is Halftime. I want to thank you for your time. Please join us next Sunday for edition of Halftime. But at this time, we are out of time. See you next Sunday!